So, here we are, Labor Day weekend, the end of summer. It seems like just yesterday that I was here talking to you about my garden. You remember that? Some people were here, maybe? Okay, how was your garden this year? That was mine. The woodchucks, aided and abetted by the squirrels, got the peas. The coyotes got the woodchucks. And then they got the squirrels. Yay. But then the rabbits moved in and got the lettuce. I will have to fortify the garden next year. And the tomatoes, though, the 3 strawberries and the 2 zucchini that I did get were delicious. So that's animals 3, gardener 1, I think. So this crazy summer is almost over. You know, the blazing heat, the rain, and all the crazy weather. But it's been, for me, a joyful summer. I've been able to go visit family. I've been able to travel a little more and get back to some of the things that we used to do. And I'm just grateful that we've had this time. But I know fall's coming, and it's time to suit up and start facing real life, so to speak. Back to school, back to the heavy business of life. And I found some parts of today's reading that I think speak to this moment. In Proverbs, it says, "A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches." So into our activities this year, we carry our names. And I wonder, have you ever thought about where your name comes from? My husband's last name is Motley. Motley means kind of miscellaneous. So I don't know where that came from in England or why. The name I was born with was Deffenbacher, which is a version probably of the German Diefenbacher, which means somebody who lived by a deep stream. And I'm just wondering if people, do you know where your first name came from? I asked my mom why she picked Terry. She said, well, she was the only girl in a family of 6, and she wanted to give me a name that was not terribly feminine and that was short enough so you couldn't make a nickname out of it. Okay. That's how I got my name. But people in school gave me a nickname anyway based on my last name. So, you know, the best laid plans. And I'm just wondering, do you know how you got your first name? You know, were you named after somebody? I'm not asking for answers, just kind of think about it. And think about the last names of your ancestors. What does that say about where they were from and where they moved to? You know, if they came through Ellis Island, sometimes like Diefenbacher becoming Deffenbacher, things got misspelled. And I think one of the tragedies of, one of the many tragedies of what we did to Black people was by taking them away from their names. And in a way that could be freeing. If you get to choose your own name at your own time, that's great. But if somebody takes your name and your heritage and your history and the people that birthed you and the knowledge that they tried to pass down to you away, that's awful. That's such a loss. A name is so important. And so I think about this, what's in a name, also what's in a good name. I mean, if you're sitting around talking about somebody, Joe Smith, oh yeah, he's a good guy. Or Betty Jones, yeah, she's a little difficult, but she's basically good. I mean, how do you earn that good name? When you go to school, When people give you nicknames, are they good nicknames, or do they give you a nickname based on something that you would rather not have highlighted? And that's one of the things we have to transcend as we grow, is, do we live to make a good name for ourselves, or do we live in a way that will give us a bad name? And that's where I get to Proverbs. Because Proverbs, is, as you heard it read, it's kind of a miscellaneous collection of sayings and instructions. There are a few poems. There's a lot of stuff just kind of piled in there, it seems. But what Proverbs is a really old, like 3,000 years old, collection of things that people thought people should know in order to have a good name for their people and for themselves as individuals. And it's been part of our religious teachings for all these 3,000 years, which is practically since the Hebrews left Egypt. And actually there are parts of Proverbs that look like they're taken from an Egyptian work for the same purpose. So it looks like it was a teaching tool. It was a kind of curriculum for teaching young people, probably mostly young men, to be good people. And it says that today. Train children in the right way, and when old, they will not stray. I don't know if it rhymes in Hebrew, but the translation rhymes in English. Incline your ear and hear my words, and apply your mind to my teaching. For it will be pleasant if you keep them within you, if all of them are ready on your lips, so that your trust may be in the Lord. I have made them known to you. Yes, to you. So, here it is. And I'm just going to focus on that first statement, that a good name is better than riches. Proverbs is the kind of work that people have looked to for the same reason that people come to take their kids to Sunday school. Sometimes even if they're not churchgoers. Because they want their children to have a good name. And as children grow, they have to make some choices. If you center your life on becoming a person with a good name, will you do that? Or will you put getting money and possessions first? Young people have to make choices. What work will I do? What will I do with my non-work time? Who do I want to spend my time with? And who around me is choosing a good name rather than getting riches? What does the Lord want me to do and be? And trying to answer these questions shapes the adult the young person will become. But I think these short messages are not just for kids. As I worked on this, I thought to myself, how am I spending my time? Am I making sure that I have a good name? Am I giving too much importance to other things? Is God at the center of my life? And so I think you could use Proverbs as a kind of a daily meditation too. Take one saying a day. Try to unpack it. Try to think about, what does it mean to you? So it's a simple statement. But the more you think about it, the more you realize Proverbs doesn't give simple answers. Because there are some questions. What does it mean to have a good name? What does it mean to not value riches? Does looking for a good name mean being devoted to having everybody think well of you no matter what else happens? Or is there some point at which your self has to be heard? And not getting riches, well, does this mean not paying attention to having enough food and enough to support your family? No. There's a boundary that each person has to respect, but it's our own, and that's where we need Jesus. That's where we need God, because that's when we need in prayer and meditation and talking to other people about these issues to find out, where is that boundary for me? And we're going to go over the boundary sometimes because we are human. Sometimes we're going to spend too much time trying to curry favor. Sometimes we're going to spend too much time devoted to material things. But that's where we need to retreat and sit in prayer and meditation to find that boundary for ourselves. And I know that for me, when it says those who are generous are blessed, for they share their bread with the poor, that I can think of it as earning God's blessing by giving bread to the poor. But actually, and you know this if you've served in a food pantry or the Red Cross or any other place where you work with those in need, you find blessing just in the act of serving. Handing a hungry person a plate of food or a homeless person a blanket and looking in their eyes as you do it makes makes me at any rate, feel gratitude to the person who is giving me the opportunity to serve. Experiencing this blessing changes me. And some commentators think that's what's going on with Jesus in the story of the Syro-Phoenician woman. That Jesus is changed by the experience of healing the woman's daughter. Now he's staying in a house and he's far away from his home country. And they think maybe it's because he's being pursued by the authorities who are beginning to get irritated with him, more than irritated. So he's like 100 miles from his home territory. And he's there with his disciples, only a few of them trying to take a little rest. But the word is out that he's there. A woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syro-Phoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Why does Mark even mention her ethnicity? It means nothing to us. But in Jesus' time, everyone would have known that because of where she came from, she was not a Jew, as was Jesus, as were most of his disciples and followers. And in those days, the Jews who were trying to get back to a close relationship with their God did not want anything to do with Gentiles, because they were in a place where people had been drifting away from the faith. People had been lured away by the riches, by the civilization around them. There were a number of other reasons, but they did not want to mix with Gentiles. So Jesus, here's the difficult thing, says, let the children be fed first. It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. What did he just do here? He called the woman a dog, an unclean and despised animal in his community. And I don't know about you, but this is a shock to me. And this is a passage which isn't preached on very often because it's difficult. Here's the Jesus who we know is the source of infinite love for all, who gave his life for us all. Here's this Jesus expressing an ugly prejudice against this desperate woman. This is the Jesus whom we worship as fully human and fully divine, yet defending a narrow ethnic boundary, describing one human being as inferior to another, as if Jesus' own view was limited by the prejudices and the biases of the humans around him. And Jesus, who is connected with God, the source of infinite power, is talking as though he thought there was a limited amount of healing power to go around. So there's one explanation, that Jesus was born as a baby and grew as a human and that maybe he did not know of his divine nature until he lived his way into his ministry. So he learned from Proverbs, like most devout Jewish boys of his generation, the wisdom that had been passed down and then distorted by the prejudices of his society. And the problem is with pithy sayings like those in Proverbs is that when they stop being used only for instruction of the young and improvement of oneself, they can start becoming labels for other people, like he's only interested in money. She's stingy and unjust, and she's always angry. God will get them for that. This name-calling can result in prejudice against whole classes of people. Go into, all those Syrophoenicians are not like us. We're generous and prudent, but they're greedy, undisciplined, dirty, like dogs. I suppose we can help them if there's anything left over. And maybe what we just read is Jesus' moment of being confined in the shell of his people's bias. I'm not sure that's an adequate explanation. I'm no theologian, but if Jesus is fully divine, it's hard for me to accept that he could ever have been that limited. And notice it's the woman who breaks boundaries. Now, she was probably well-to-do because she could travel and because her daughter slept on a bed and not a mat. But here she is at a time when women were shut up at home, the property of their male relatives, unable to hold any public role, regarded as always inferior to men in every way. It's breathtakingly daring that this woman wouldn't take no for an answer, that she made her way into the presence of Jesus when even a lot of his followers weren't allowed to come there. She spoke up in the face of dismissal and prejudice, and her love for her daughter made her assert her human right to be healed. She believed that God's healing power was big enough, even if Jesus didn't seem to. She answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." And this is amazing. Jesus changes his mind. He said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." He comes down on what we would agree is the right side, the place we think Jesus always is. So I'm wondering if there's another view of this, that Jesus knew perfectly well what was going on, but he wanted it to be memorable. So he let the exchange play out because in his divinity, he knew the woman, knew what she would say, knew her desperation and her strength, and knew that the disciples with him would start out buying into the prejudice. When he called her a dog and said that his healing power was limited only to his own people, I can hear the disciples kind of nodding along, sort of saying to themselves, "Too bad that woman got in here. Boy, teachers being extra generous, paying attention to her, not kicking her out. No, she's not poor, so we don't have to be generous. He's putting her in her place." What? He's giving her what she asked for. What? And then the disciples had to confront their own bigotry. As do we. In these days, I worry the most about the conflict, the division, the name-calling, the conspiracy theories that are out there. It's never been more important to know God's word on who belongs and how to decide who belongs. It's never been more important to study how to live good lives as citizens, as community members, as Christians. There are no Syrophoenicians, but I bet you all have heard a lot of labels that get applied to other people. I'm not going to go through them. I may think that I'm accepting of all, that I'm open-minded, but I always have to consider myself. How am I really living? How many people, much poorer or much richer, more educated, less educated, more in the in crowd, less in the in crowd, are part of my daily life. How many people do I interact with who speak with an accent? And I know that it's been difficult this last year. We haven't been out. We haven't seen people. And I haven't ridden the subway in over a year, which is where I used to see people of all different kinds. I've not gone downtown to a movie or a play, or gone out to dinner. When I did travel, it was to see family and old friends, not new places, to meet new people. And I've not crossed paths with those who ask for money in public places. These encounters were always a little struggle for me between my urge to pass judgment on them and turn away because I think I know that they really could or should do something different. But I always give because I know whatever they do with my gift, whatever name I might be tempted to apply to them, giving makes me blessed. So this is a lot to pile into one sermon, but I hope that we remember always to see everybody that we meet as Jesus saw that woman, finally, as a human worthy of God's love, just as we are worthy of God's love, and that we act as Jesus acted then. Amen.